attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Free Fall. Hello, everyone. This is Andy Steele. I'm glad to be back for another show. The guest today is going to be Massimo Mazzucco, the man behind several 9/11 Truth-related films, who's working on a new one he'll be telling you about. I'm looking forward to this interview, and so should you. So stay tuned. We'll be getting to it shortly. Now, for the newcomers who might be hearing the show for the first time, this show is about 9/11 truth, 9/11 science, and it's about the people all over the world making their mark in history and letting it be known that we were lied to about that terrible day. That the Twin Towers and World Trade Center 7 were brought down in a pre-planned controlled demolition, and that government officials and the pundits on TV paid to make sure you stay asleep are participating in a deception that history will ultimately judge them for. We present scholars and scientists who have proven this case, in particular the folks at Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. AE 9/11 Truth is a nonprofit organization led by Richard Gage, AIA, leading the way when it comes to the science and the hard evidence proving what really destroyed Towers 1, 2, and 7 on 9/11. Its movies are Blueprint for Truth and 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out, and these are movies you need to watch if you haven't already, folks. You can see them on the internet just by doing a YouTube search, or you can buy them at ae911truth.org and show them to everyone you know, and you need to do that. Now, if you're awakened to this knowledge already about 9/11, then the question is, what are you doing about it? All right, are you reaching out to others? Are you doing something to bring the conclusion of this post-9/11 world closer to our current present here? Maybe you don't know how to. All right, maybe you want to be part of a team. Well, then you need to go to ae911truth.org right now and click the volunteer tab on the right-hand side. All right, from there you can just let the team there know that you want to volunteer and somebody will get in touch with you. It's as easy as that, and you will find a place with this team, and you will get the support you need to make a difference, not only in your life, but in the world as well, in history. Again, that's ae911truth.org. Check it out. Okay, last week we had Richard Gage, Bob McIlvaine, and Deborah Voorhees on the show to rebut Rachel Maddow of MSNBC and her recent attack of 9/11 Truth. It was a great show. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of that great panel of people and what they've contributed to this fight. So you can search for the show in our archives at 911freefall.com. It's one you don't want to miss. Spread it around, share it with your friends. I skipped the news last week because we had such a packed panel and it was such an important broadcast, but I also forgot the moment of silence. And these things happen, of course. We usually get it most weeks. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take that customary 10 seconds of silence we always take to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families, and, of course, everyone who has died in the wars of the post-9/11 world. So we'll take those 10 seconds of silence right now. Okay, and that is 10 seconds. All right, we have a lot of news to catch up with. First off, Jonathan Cole has a new research paper at the Journal for 9/11 Studies along with Timothy Eastman. You may remember Jonathan Cole was one of our early guests on the show who performed a number of scientific experiments on video to demonstrate the likelihood that explosives were used to bring down the buildings in New York with highly advanced thermite. His videos are available on the net. You can just Google Jonathan Cole 9/11 and you should find them. The title of his new paper is WTC Destruction, an analysis of peer-reviewed technical literature. And this paper studies the overall picture of the controlled demolition versus progressive collapse debate and the nature of the issue itself. And what I like in this paper, in the beginning, it says this, and I'm going to quote it verbatim here for a few lines. It says, the question of which of these two hypotheses is correct is singularly important because its current lack of resolution leaves unmet the following critical needs. And this is assuming the progressive collapse theory. 1, thousands of other structures may also be subject to such catastrophic destruction by office fires and inspections and upgrades based on the determination of what caused the World Trade Center buildings to collapse may be needed to ensure public safety. 2, significant structural design analysis tools and computer models need upgrades to account for the potential of such catastrophic destruction. And 3, major revisions to building codes for high-rise steel frame buildings are critically needed. And this is a basic common sense argument impediment for a new investigation into the destruction of the buildings, folks. All right, even if somebody doesn't want to face the obvious evidence that points to elements in our society being behind the attack, you can't argue with the need to rectify why a high-rise like World Trade Center 7 completely collapsed because of random fires. And playing devil's advocate here for a moment, if you want to cling to the official story, then this puts in question the safety of other high-rise buildings. All right? And one of the points of this paper's conclusion, it says, and I'm going to read again verbatim, what is most striking about our results is the fact that there is serious disagreement as to how the World Trade Center structures fell on September 11, 2001. While precise sequences of every building component failure cannot be determined, the overall basic mechanism of destruction, i.e. some type of fire-induced natural gravitational collapse or some type of planned demolition, is clearly in dispute. There is no consensus. At this point, almost 12 years later, there should not be any significant disagreement about such a fundamental issue as to how 3 buildings were destroyed so completely, given the magnitude of the event, the implications of the event, and the repercussions for existing and future structural design. Couldn't said it better myself. And there's a lot of other points made here in this paper, folks, so I'll have a link up at 911freefall.com for you to read it. And I'll see if I can get Jonathan Cole back on here along with Timothy Eastman to discuss this paper further. Okay, now, in other news, the collective 9/11 Truth Ghost struck C-SPAN's Washington Journal program a couple of times over the last few weeks. The first time, Mike Cook, who we've interviewed on the show, attempted to get through to Senator Tammy Baldwin. Now, the host that day was Peter Slynn, who was notoriously rude to anybody that asked questions about the official 9/11 story, and he cut Mike off. He muted him down, didn't give him a chance to speak. You'll hear it for yourself. And after having his question trivialized by Slynn to being one about quote-unquote conspiracy theories, Tammy Baldwin gave a politically correct answer that pledged allegiance to the official story and played on the whole issue of the Boston bombing. So here is that clip.
Mike, Newport, Kentucky, Democrat. You're on with Senator Tammy Baldwin.
Thank you for taking my call. I have just a couple quick statements and then a question. An awful lot of money has been spent fighting the post-9/11 wars, and yet taxpayers still have many unanswered questions about this event. Despite the fact that an international team of scientists published in the peer-reviewed journal, the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal, proving the existence of nanothermite found in the dust.
Okay, tell you what, we got where you're going on that first question. What's your next question, Mike?
Standards and technology, the agency tasked with investigating why these 3 buildings failed.
Hey, Mike, do you have a follow-up question? We understand where you're going on that first issue.
Samples.
Okay, you know what? We'll see what the senator has to say about that. 9/11 conspiracy theories and different ways of looking at 9/11. What are your thoughts?
You know, the report that I go by is the 9/11 Commission, and frankly, many of its recommendations and assessments have become very relevant this week as we've dealt with a shocking tragedy in Boston. And, it's actually given me this week an opportunity to reflect on how far we've come, for example, with Homeland Security in the 10 years since that agency was created. As you noted, I'm on the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. And, they are hard at work, the Joint Terrorism Task Force through the FBI and Homeland Security and local officials in Boston in trying to bring answers and bring ultimately the perpetrators to bear the full weight of justice in the United States. But back to the caller's question, what's important to me is that we have made dramatic improvements in securing the safety of our homeland, the security of our homeland, but we can always do better.
Okay, so basically the book that Tammy Baldwin goes by is the 9/11 Commission, which doesn't talk about World Trade Center 7. So if you want to thorough understanding, Senator Baldwin, of 9/11, you need to get a new book. It doesn't mention probably the biggest smoking gun of this evidence. So you notice Peter Slen trivializes it, tells him to move on to the next topic. We don't want to talk about this. We don't want to face this. I'm going to act as gatekeeper and deflect the senator from having to answer a real question. That's what you hear played out here. Now, we're going to play another call. This one is by another Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth volunteer, Kelly David, and this is her question to Congressman Bobby Scott, who currently serves on the committee on the Judiciary, where he is the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, Homeland Security, and Investigations, and he's a member of the Subcommittee on Constitutional and Civil Justice.
.org. Our first call, New York. This is on our Republican line. Kelly, good morning.
Good morning. Something that continues to impact our national security policy, of course, is 9/11. And the National Institute of Standards and Technology claims that fire caused the complete destruction of the World Trade Center Building 7 on 9/11, but has admitted that the building was in free-fall acceleration for at least 100 feet, which means it was meeting no resistance for roughly about 8 stories. So using your common sense, how is that possible without the use of pre-planted explosives?
So what does that mean for the common day situation of the Boston bombings, ma'am?
Because they're all connected.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
Well, there is a theory that the bombs were planted, that 9/11 was a government conspiracy. I don't believe that.
Mike from Wyoming, Michigan. This is Democrats' line.
Bobby Scott says, I don't believe that. Doesn't qualify it, doesn't cite any evidence. He just says, I don't believe it, because he doesn't want to believe it, all right? But that's an example of a great question that you need to ask everybody you see, because it's right direct to the point. And I say this, folks, whenever you approach these people, have the question written down ahead of time. That way you're not nervous. That way you're concise and you're right to the point. And have it be about something specific. I understand the desire and the emotion to kind of come across as angry and say things like 9/11 was an inside job, and may be what you feel. It's better to pin them down like a lawyer on a specific point, like free fall acceleration. Ask them to use your common sense so they can't weasel out of it and claim that they don't know anything about science. So this is the strategy, and again, you can call into C-SPAN yourself. Notice how her question asked nothing about the perpetrators of 9/11 either. Nothing about conspiracy. It was a very straightforward question asking this man, Bobby Scott, to tap into his common sense and explain how 100 feet of free fall makes sense without the use of explosives. And Bobby Scott couldn't do it. And I think we need to start rating how these politicians respond to these questions when they're asked, okay? And on this little test, Bobby Scott gets an F- for his poor listening comprehension and his inability to stay on topic. So if you happen to run into Bobby Scott somewhere, throw this question to him again. And you might want to speak slowly to make sure he understands what you're asking him, all right? And demand a straight answer from these people. They're more afraid of you than you need to be of them. Same goes with Tammy Baldwin. And I think we'll be fair and give her a D because she didn't get a chance to hear the question. Still no excuse, though. If after 11 years you don't smell a rat when it comes to 9/11, you shouldn't be a senator. All right, our guest this week is Massimo Mazzucco. He is an award-winning filmmaker, screenwriter, and journalist. He's arguably one of the foremost 9/11 truthers in Italy. His website is LUOGOCOMUNE.net, and I'll have the link up to that on 911freefall.com for everybody to check out. But this is a news website that grew out of his investigation on 9/11. Now, currently, this website covers all the most important issues at stake in the new millennium, from big pharma to world economics, from alternative energy to attacks on civil liberties. And some of his documentaries include the 9/11 Global Deceit, and then the New American Century. So he'll be mentioning those and talk about his new film today on the show. Welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and on such short notice. Now, okay, tell us about your awakening to the evidence first, because we always ask this of our guests. How did you realize the real nature of the 9/11 crime, and what prompted you to start speaking out about it?
How did I well, okay, there's two different questions. On the day I was watching the television 9/11. I'm 58, so by then I was already an adult person, and I had been researching and studying enough to know immediately that there was something wrong. I could not detect the demolition of the towers visually, But my thinking was political. I was thinking of the connection and who would take an advantage. And I was very, very shocked or stricken when I realized that at 4 p.m. local time, we had, for example, Netanyahu connected in World Vision from Israel, who was saying, now everybody in the world knows what these Arabs are capable of doing, and we have to take measures of that. And I was very surprised with the fact that he would already have such an intuitive knowledge on what could be behind these events. I mean, it took the U.S. at least 2 days, which is very short but still much longer than him, to start to figure out who allegedly it was. Anyway, the process has been very, very quick for me because, as I said, I had already studied the JFK assassination, the RFK assassination, and once you understand the dynamics of this, it really just you can find the common points, and they just repeat themselves very easily. I mean, when you hear of a luggage, FBI finding a luggage in Boston with the Koran and the Testament inside and the instructions how to fly a plane, I mean, that for me is enough. It's plenty, because I know of the techniques that they use, and they're always the same. I mean, Oswald, they went to his home and they found the receipt for the gun in his drawer. So once you understand that kind of stupidity, you find it all the time. It's very easy to find.
What do you consider to be the strongest 9/11 truth evidence, in your opinion, after all these years of research?
I was just thinking now, well, strong in terms of actual, serious, rational thinking. It's definitely the free fall of, I would say, the 3 buildings, because we keep also the other 2. NIST itself admits in their report that the towers came down, quote, open quotes, practically at free fall speed. So that practically doesn't make much for the other side, and it's really 3 buildings that came down practically in free fall. So that is the complex argument. I was thinking before when you were mentioning to have your question ready all the time and ready to be asked, the free fall for Building 7 question. I have another one that I use a lot. It's even faster, and I think it's even more effective for a short-range effect when I'm like on a range. By the way, I do a lot of, I live in the States, but I practice 9/11, so to speak, over Italy. I've never done anything here of any significance. There's plenty of incredibly good researchers here. I found that there was no one in my own country, and I took this up 10 years ago, and I kept going from there. So whenever I am on television or radio shows mostly, and have confrontations sometimes directly with the bunkers, my question is, how can a plane that crashes to the ground allegedly in one piece, pieces of this plane be found at 8 miles away from the crash site? That's even easier for the general audience to grasp, because free fall implies already a concept of physics, and it makes sense to us. We chew this material every day, and for us it's obvious. But I found this in making my own film, this last film I'm making now. I found that actually, if you want to explain to the layperson, so by layperson I mean both a person who has not a particular interest in 9/11, which is really the big problem, and also not enough information about it. You first need to explain free fall, and explain that you have to show a falling body, and explain that all the potential energy is converted into kinetic energy. Then you have to show, for example, a rock falling when it hits the side of the mountain, then it breaks out, then it slows down. Then they understand that there is some conversion of energy from kinetic to breakage or deformation. And after that, you can introduce the towers. So it's complex for the layperson if you want to strike a nerve. But I mean, there are many ways to do that. What I find to be the biggest problem, both in Europe and Italy and here, is to find somebody who's really willing to know. Because once you want to know, you already know. So the problem is really psychological. I find that the second part of the Richard Gage film, the one on the psychology of conspiracy, is very, very important. It should receive more coverage, because I think that's really the most important aspect. I mean, what you have here is normally, it's a classical mechanism of human nature. It's called denial. Your mind will not allow you to go where you know that you cannot afford to go. So if there is a conclusion waiting for you that you don't like, you will not go there. It's as simple as that. So in order for people in order to turn this around, we must find a key to remove that denial and make that needs to know impellent. So I find that when you push people towards the truth, you put them in a corner, of course they will have to admit, you know, I mean, you put them, I'm so good at putting people in the corner, they probably hate me, and I lose friends at a very high rate every week because of that. But they really will not let that sink because they're really not ready for that. So I think it's much more important to find a way to stimulate the curiosity and suggest that you would be living in a much better country if the institutions were really working properly and justice was brought to those, whoever they are, that deserve to whom it deserves to be brought. That changes somehow the attitude of the person. And we're talking about converting here, okay? When we talk within people in the 9/11 movement, of course, this is not an issue. I'm talking about general people, which I think is really the problem now, because the big barrier now is in this 10 years, we have collected all the evidence that can be collected. It's there, it's convincing, it's very strong, it stands the scrutiny of science, and it's ready. Now, how do we make the people pay attention to it? That's really, to me, is really the question. There is a mechanism in media. Of course, my philosophy, my opinion is that the big lie was distributed in the world through the media, and only the media can somehow fix the problem. If you look at what happened in the Kennedy assassination, for example, we have had the 70s, in which there was practically a few books only. Then came out the movie JFK. Then it became a national thing. Then the popular feeling changed. Only when there was enough evidence and we were ready to accept that the majority of Americans will actually believe in a conspiracy, then you see suddenly that the documentaries, the institutional documentaries, I'm talking History Channel, Discovery Channel, all of those, start to admit, implicitly though, but they do admit that the conspiracy is most likely the most probable solution. You will never hear in frank words, it was a conspiracy. You cannot do that. It's as simple as that. That's the limit. But you can hope as much as tipping the weight over to the other side. In that now you watch a Kennedy documentary by anybody, and if you get away with the feeling that yes, it was a conspiracy. So the remaining 1%, you have to do it, but the 99% is done. I feel that it will be the same with 9/11, and somehow the process will be faster. Luckily, because of internet, as you mentioned before. I mean, this has changed everything. You and I would not be talking here. I would not even know about Richard Gage and architects and engineers had the internet not existed. I would probably even be sitting here thinking, what the hell happened 10 years ago? Because I'm not really sure. But that's as far as I would go. So I think the process is going to be the same. And once there is enough desire from the population at large to know the truth, then the media will respond. We'll do it cautiously, we'll do it tentatively, but we'll have to go that way, because remember, media is driven by numbers, by audience numbers, even before it's driven by politics, because audience numbers are money, it's advertising, that's everything. For example, what happened in 2006 in Italy with my first film you mentioned, which is called Global Deceit. It's only in Italian, though. Don't look it up. It's called in Italian, Inganno Globale. What I did is I prepared. I'm a documentarist. I'm a filmmaker, so I know how to make a professional looking film. I prepared this on 9/11, which was basically the equivalent of loose change here, with all the major points that we have in the movement against the official version. I prepared it and I waited and waited and waited. We came to a tipping point in about 2006 when the internet was bubbling with discussions on the internet, and I knew that I started putting out little things on the internet, little films like the Pentagon videos are fake, little baits. At one day, somebody took a bait. One small television published that in their own news show. Look at this, on the internet, this is what they say, the Pentagon video are fake, which, by the way, can be proven. At that point, somebody called me and says, do you have anything else? Because this is interesting. People want to know. Believe me, in 3 months, every single media in Italy was talking about the 9/11 conspiracy. Now, I'm not saying that every Italian now believes that it was a conspiracy, but every single Italian is aware that there is a major problem with the official version since 5 years from now. For us, it's easier, of course, because we're talking about a foreign country. And besides, it's easier for us to criticize America or the imperialists, so it's easier. Here, it's much more difficult because you have to look at yourself. But the process will have to take place and will take place. And there will be a point where the media will actually be looking for good products which can satisfy the desire from the audiences to know more about it without feeling threatened by the conclusions. And this is also the conclusion of my little speech. This is what I'm doing with my last film, which I'm preparing now. I just completed it now. It took me 3 years to put it together. And that's not because I'm slow, but because I wanted to put together, let me backtrack for a second. In 2009 or 10, I realized that we all have made a major effort, each of us in our own countries, to bring out the truth. But there was one thing that was missing. We still don't have one piece of one product, one item in which you can see, which contains the entire debate from top to bottom. So what I did is I took all the major points, talking points of the 9/11 movement, all the answers that every single decent debunker has given to those points throughout Italy, France, Germany, America, so Popular Mechanics basically, here, Jérôme Quirin in France, one Paolo Attivissimo in Italy. They always use the same answers anyway. You ask any one of them, the squibs are because of the pressure of the air. They always have the same standardized answers. But I show them, and then I rebut each of those answers showing that they don't hold water. So it's actually 3 films in one. It's the whole list of talking points, accusations to the official version, all the answers given, and the rebuttal to each of those answers. So the conclusion should be that nothing has been debunked. All the major questions still stand. Don't go to the debunkers and don't hide behind them, which is what a lot of people have been doing, especially in my country. Oh, it's all been debunked, don't bother me. No, sorry, not so fast. That's my whole point. And finally, we have a piece where anybody who wants to look at all the items seriously and all the evidence, I mean, as serious as I can make it, of course, they can take this and use it for a starting point for what I think it needs to be now the next level of the discussion. The next level should not be anymore, in my opinion, obviously, that we just accuse and say, look, the scripts, and people, like you said before, hiding away and trying not to look and turning a blind eye to it. The step should be, let me also backtrack here. The premise is that the people who defend the official version, in some cases, like you said, they protect their own working place, of course. They don't want to be fired, so they will never do something like that. But there's also something deeper, which is the reason why psychologically you don't want to go there. And it's the feeling or the fear that you will actually be destroying the credibility of the institutions if you admit to the conspiracy. If we reverse that point and show that actually the institutions would come out stronger and much more credible if they actually pursued the truth and went after anybody who needs to be gone after, no matter who they are, then maybe people, because people down below, they know that this was a conspiracy. Most everybody senses it to some measure or another. They know there's something really wrong. The point is, I don't want to look because I don't want to draw the conclusions that I can no longer trust my institutions. This is the mechanism, I believe. If we can reverse that and show that actually by looking and forcing institutions to do what they need to do, you will have a better and stronger America, that I think could be the reversal mechanism that we can start.
And I've said it before on this show, exposing this crime for the real crime that it was would not be detrimental to America or show us as weak. It would actually show the strength of America and that ordinary citizens could overcome this and make this the country that we were taught we were when we were kids. So you are absolutely right about that. Now, to the audience, of course, I just want to state AE 9/11 Truth, which I proudly promote every week on the show, doesn't get into geopolitics or blaming any particular party for the attacks of 9/11. They just focus on the scientific evidence that the Twin Towers were brought down via controlled demolition. Now, with that said, something that commonly gets in the way of the bare bones scientific evidence is, of course, people's preconceptions about our country and about who they were told were responsible for the attacks. And I'm going to tell a quick story, and my regular listeners might be getting sick of hearing this story, so I'll try to be quick about it. But I went to talk to a congressman or no, he wasn't a congressman. He was running for office for Congress. He lost eventually. But when I confronted him about this, and because he had said that he didn't agree with our findings, and then afterwards in private I asked him, "What about our findings did you disagree with?" And his first answer was, "Please don't do this to me." And the next thing he tried to level at me was, "What about Bin Laden confessing to the crime?" And I had my own answer, which was, yeah, well, the same. Or he said, "How do you feel about that?" And I said, "Well, the same thing I feel about them throwing his body in the ocean within hours and refusing to release the photos." And he kind of quieted on that. But can you talk about Bin Laden and his alleged claim of responsibility? Because I saw you address it in your film.
I don't know which claim of responsibility he's talking about. The only claim I know from Bin Laden, which is legitimate, is that he denied responsibility on September 16th, I think. On a Pakistani newspaper, he came out saying it wasn't me. Not only I don't do stuff like that, we don't do it because we Islamics don't do that, we don't kill innocent women and children, but I would not have the means even if I wanted to. And I said, if you really want to find who did it, he said, look at other nations and their secret services. So that, to me, is the only original and legitimate statement by Bin Laden, whom I am strongly convinced died on December 2001, by the way. There's plenty of evidence for that. So we don't know. I mean, for example, on the evening of September 10th, when everybody believes that he was sitting in the cave and planning the last things or getting the cake ready for the next day, he was actually flown. This was reported by CBS. Dan Rather, was actually flown by the ISI, the Pakistani Secret Service, emergency flown to an hospital in, could it be Rawalpindi? I could be wrong with the city, because he had a crisis. He needed dialysis very urgently. The man was dying, and they needed him alive at least until September 12th. Okay? After that, they didn't care anymore. But on the evening of the 10th, he was actually taken by the Secret Service of Pakistan to an emergency hospital in a Pakistani town. So, of course, I mean, I don't have a comment on that. I mean, the things are obvious. Like you say, if you catch the most important terrorist in the world, the first thing you do is you call the press and you show them the body. You don't have to give it's a good excuse, the pictures were too horrific for the people. Sure, I can believe that. Show them to the international press, get somebody from 5-6 different international magazines, have them testify. When they killed Che Guevara in Bolivia in '68, which was actually a CIA-led operation, the first thing that the military did was to call the journalists. You have these famous pictures of the body laying down, which emerged later. The journalist testified it was him, and then they disposed of the body in a place where you cannot find him, so that there will be no martyrdom and no pilgrimage and all that. That is a good point. But first you show it to the people who can confirm the fact that it was him. They forgot this little step.
Well, but see, and I don't usually get into the Bin Laden raid. We're touching upon it today on this show, but I will say to the audience, they won't release the Bin Laden photos, but they release the photos of other guys that were killed in the raid, and they're horrific and terrible to look at and bloody and gory. But they released them. I saw them in a British newspaper. I have them on my computer, folks. So, but they won't release the Bin Laden one. So, I mean, and this gets into a whole other area. But supposedly this guy's on kidney dialysis, but then a video gets released of him probably 30 pounds, 50 pounds heavier. And I remember when I was young and I was still asleep to this whole issue, and I just took 9/11 for face value. I was on my friend's computer playing a game, and they announced that the Bin Laden video had been found. And I remember the Fox News host making a big point of saying, "See, this proves Bin Laden was behind it because he's saying this." And she kept on reiterating this. And I remember thinking, even though I was kind of asleep and didn't really care, I remember thinking, well, yeah, of course, I thought that was a foregone conclusion that he was. You said it was. Why are you making a big deal of this? So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, one quick thing on the Bin Laden, just because you asked me. If you make a search and collect all the news clippings from the period winter 2001, you will find that in January 2002, I think this is either CNN or BBC, the President Musharraf declared, I believe Bin Laden is dead. 1 month later, the president of Afghanistan, the current, what's his name, Karzai, I am convinced that Bin Laden is dead. I'm talking BBC, CBS, Fox News, okay, not just a little website. In June 2002, Oliver North said, I have good contacts within the government, and they told me Bin Laden is dead. So all of them confirmed that. And at the same time, you never seen the guy alive anymore. Because the person we saw on those videos 5 years later was obviously not Bin Laden, and that should also be explained. Anyway, I don't think, you're right. We shouldn't spend time on Bin Laden because that's not where the conversation is today. Paradoxically, it has become an accessory argument. So strong is the evidence now that it doesn't really matter what happened to Bin Laden. I mean, whoever lied to us, once you can prove that they lied to us, they have to explain what happened. It's not up to us.
Right. Now, another barrier that people throw up in this is, like you said, they just can't think that people within their own government, society could be responsible for something like this. So, for those people for whom questioning anything about 9/11 is an instant non-starter, can you briefly go over the history of American war provocations as you did in the American century?
Well, very simply. Just remember that America, the United States, cannot go to war unless it's attacked first. The president cannot just wake up one day and declare war on somebody. You have to be attacked first. Now, who the hell is going to attack America? No one ever will, because it would be stupid to do so. So America theoretically could never participate in a war, could never take part of the spoils of the wars, and wars are important for many reasons. I mean, cynically talking, wars are one of the best economical things that can happen to a country, unfortunately, and in some periods at least. But anyway, if you go back, for example, to the 1898 war with Spain, it was started by the sinking of USS Maine, which was blamed on the Spanish, and 80 years later, the United States admitted that actually it was a self-inflicted sinking of the boat. 250 sailors lost their life. In order to enter World War I, the United States had to create an incident with the Kaiser, with Germany, and it's a complex story, but it has to do with practically inducing a German submarine to sink the Lusitania, which was a British ship carrying weapons to England from America, which also happened to transport 120 U.S. passengers. That was enough to start the incident. Because Americans were on that boat. Pearl Harbor, of course, I don't think we need to discuss this. I mean, it's at least it's proven by now that Roosevelt sent faxes, cables at the time, stating that we wish that America does not react. We want them to attack first. Let them do what they have to do. Basically, that was the contents of the cable. 3,000 sailors were sacrificed. On Pearl Harbor. On the Tonkin, for example, to enter war with Vietnam officially, because until 1964, the United States was only participating as an external help to South Vietnam, but they were not at war with North Vietnam. They had to create the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the attack on the Maddox, USS Maddox, which was later officially attacked by North Vietnamese torpedoes. Before he died, then Secretary of Defense McNamara confessed that incident was created, that it never happened. It's actually on film, and we have a tape saying it didn't happen. It doesn't get any more clear than that. The first Gulf War was created by luring Saddam into attacking Kuwait, so that they let him believe that he could keep Kuwait, basically. And the second he did, of course, they had Kuwait invoke the intervention, and at the same time they had the famous nurses and what's it called, the incubators story, where which was all fake and constructed, by the way, and that gave us an excuse to attack there. And of course, I mean, if 9/11 had been an attack for the Islamic, really, it would be the first time in history that America goes legitimately to war. But it's very hard to believe at this point. Okay.
Well, I guess compounded with all the forensic evidence that we were lied to. Now, I played some C-SPAN clips before, and also, first, before I even get to those, you heard my question to John McCain on C-SPAN, and you're going to be using it in your new movie. Can you talk about just your reaction to McCain's answer there?
I was jumping on the chair, because I was completing at that very moment on my screen. I had the chapter on Building 7, and I was working on the last 5 seconds. Believe me, it's not a joke. And somebody sent me an email, look at this. And that was exactly the ending I was looking for, because then I could add, my film ends exactly with the question that you posed to him. How do you explain a free fall for 2.25 seconds, which equals 8 stages of the building in free fall without explosives. So all I did was connect the two, and I said, the same question was posed to John McCain in April 2013, and this is what he answered. He didn't. And then I say, it is too bad that he didn't answer, because John McCain is the very person who signed the foreword to the popular mechanics debunking book, Debunking 9/11 Myths. So in that book, McCain states that 9/11 must be discussed by evidence and evidence only. That's what he says. And when the evidence is presented, then conclusions can be drawn. These are his own words. So it came like the icing on the cake. It was just so happy.
Well, and what you might not be aware of is that activist Blair Gadsby held a hunger strike in front of McCain's office back in 2008, where they talked about this issue along with other things. He met with one of McCain's aides, and he offered to have Richard Gage and others available to talk to him. McCain eventually wrote a letter to him and said that if you, and I'm paraphrasing it because I don't have it in front of me, but if there's new evidence, scientific evidence, something that's scientifically and substantial, then you can forward it to me. So this qualifies as the new, because the admission by NIST of free fall happened after McCain wrote those words. So this qualifies as that new scientific evidence that he was looking for.
The only problem is you will never get an answer. It's like the guy from NIST who says, I don't know about molten steel, send me the evidence. It was sent to him and he never answered, of course.
And that's the problem, is they're shielded by these hosts. And now I played those clips in the beginning of the program, where Mike Cook is censored essentially by Peter Slen, and then the other one where they don't even follow up. Can you respond to those?
Well, the one that you played, I slightly disagree with you on the censoring term. In that case, I never heard that clip before. To me, he was just trying to minimize it. Oh, yeah, I know where you're going. What's your answer? But he actually turned the ball, put the ball in the guest's court, because the guest has to do a really acrobatic job to get out of there. So it was not really defending her. He was pretty much a bastard, I would say, because he
marginalized it.
Yeah, he just lowered the ball, but then he let it go on the other side. He says basically, "Oh yeah, other theories. What do you say about it?" I mean, that poor person. I feel sorry for these people, honestly, in one way. Because they are really between a rock and a hard place. I mean, how do you expect a senator, this is just servants of the bankers and the real powerful people. This is why I keep saying that these are not our target. I mean, it's good to use them, to use their embarrassment, for example, like I try to do in my film using your clip, but to show it to people, not to themselves, to them. We never send any of those people to jail nor to trial. But what we can do is convince the larger audience that these people are all pretty much complicit with their silence, and we should not tolerate their silence anymore. I would respect a senator who said, I prefer not to answer the question. That I would respect, because I would it's like Cochrane. Do you remember David Cochrane, the guy, the young man from Mineta? I don't know if you ever heard. There is
no, I've never heard of him.
You know the young man from Mineta, the 30 miles, 50 miles, 10 miles, right? Okay.
Oh yes, okay, Norman Mineta.
It was figure out who it was. The name was David Cochrane, and I think what's his name? Hill, the Canadian researcher who pretty much calls up everybody on the phone. I think his name is Hill. Pump It Out is his website. He managed to call him up on the phone. And the guy answered, Cochrane. He says, I understand that you were in the PIOC with Mineta. Can you elaborate a little more on the exchange that you had, and what was the order that was still to stand? And the guy was very, very, very upfront and said, I understand your curiosity. I respect your curiosity. But you need to understand my position. All that was needed to said, I have said to the 9/11 Commission, and I have nothing else to add. Thank you very much. Now, if you go look into the documentation of the 9/11 Commission, you'll find that one David Cochrane, military assistant to the vice president, was interviewed in 2004 by the 9/11 Commission, and exactly on the inbound airplane, the Pentagon airplane, and on the language used for the shoot down. That's the theme of the conversation. But if you look up in the corner, you will see that that document has been removed from public access and to this day is classified. So there you have your answer. All we need to do is declassify that document. And he was honest. He said, all I had to do, I told to the 9/11 Commission. Meaning, if they don't want to show it to you, it's not my problem. I told them what I knew. So it's there. All we need to do is declassify that document. And we have the interview from the young man from Mineta who will most likely confirm that the White House had ground-to-air missiles, which I have also found in my own research. And of course, we're wondering whether you was to use them or not against the incoming, which was headed towards the White House, not towards the Pentagon. And the 50, 30, and 10 miles was to the White House, not to Washington. So these people are saying, we're going to get shot, basically. We're going to get a plane on our head. Do the orders still stand? And of course, they do. Have you heard anything to the contrary? And then we know what happened.
Now, you said that, that the senators should not be the target.
No, sorry, let me correct. They should not be the final target. It's good to use them in order to prove their embarrassment. But the idea that you could actually force arm wrestle McCain to admit something, you will never be able to do that. That's why I'm saying it's better just to take the... when he swallows, in your clip, he says, please let me know that we talk in Spanish, send me a note, and he really swallows a big frog, basically, before he completes the sentence. That's more telling than anything else. That's emotionally, to regular people, to an average audience, that speaks volumes.
Who should be the final target, in your opinion?
The final target, there is no final. The target is the worldwide population. The final targets on which we want the results. The means to get to that is the same media that through which the lies came. So it has to be a slow healing process. You will not have... even when he had the second commission on the Kennedy assassination, maybe not many people know this, but there's actually been a second commission called SCSA, House Committee of Assassinations, which investigated the Kennedy assassination again and concluded that Dealey Plaza was most likely a conspiracy. It's there. It says most likely because they will never admit for sure. And they have proof of that. They found the sound proof. But that will not do it because they will never admit officially because the same institutions cannot say we are corrupt. You will never have that.
Well, what gets me about this whole thing is that the events become bigger and bigger, and this is the way I boil it down, is a lot of people can look at the Kennedy thing as, this is one guy, one president, messed with the wrong people, and that's what happened. And it doesn't affect my life so much. It does, but in the same sense it doesn't. The people on September 11th, however, were ordinary people who just went to work, and you notice that these things become more brazen, they become bigger, they involve more people and destroy more lives. So I feel like there's a sense, I feel it in myself, and I understand the people out there too who are impatient and get angry. They feel a sense of urgency because it feels like there's an impending danger, and they may not be patient for about for 20 years from now for them to finally acknowledge that Building 7 might have likely been an explosion or a controlled demolition. No. But
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I need to complete my answer because the way I put it, I just realized it sounds pretty stupid. I'm not satisfied with the fact that the institution will come as close as possible to the truth. I'm saying all you can expect from the institution is what I described. At the same time, there is a process within the population. If you have a poll now, 92 or 95% of Americans will tell you they're convinced that Oswald did not kill Kennedy, or at least he did not act alone. So by now, we know anyway. We don't know it officially. It will never be on the front page of the Washington Post. But everybody knows. So basically, another president cannot be killed in the same way because we would know by now. So what's really important is not that on one day we have a paper somewhere that says guilty, with the big exclamative point. That's not what I think should be the finality. The finality should be the growth of the population at large in terms of understanding these processes and making it less and less possible for them to be replicated in the future. I don't want revenge on Dick Cheney. If I could sit down 5 minutes with Dick Cheney in a room alone, I cannot promise what I would do or not. I'm not sure. But maybe not, because I understand that he's part of a larger game as well. So if you look in terms of, you say that these things are getting larger and larger. True. At the same time, humanity as such is starting to think larger and larger. When there is a new idea now, it circulates through the internet, and it's suddenly acquired by millions and millions of people at the same time. I mean, 20 years ago, you would have to write a book. And you would have to wait for people to buy your book, read it, and maybe possibly pass it on to someone else. I mean, ridiculous. I would never fight if I had to go back to those days, because it's just hopeless. So it's a larger process. There will not be, this is my opinion, there will never be an actual quote-unquote justice on 9/11. The justice, without the quotes, will be in that at some point, hopefully as soon as possible, and thanks to all of us and the efforts we're making, there will be enough realization from the population at large, the large majority of the population, of what happened, and therefore that cannot happen again. I'd be happy. I would sign that right now. I mean, even though I'm not sending Dick Cheney to jail, I would sign for that right now. If in 5 years from now we would reach a point where this has been acquired and nothing like that could ever happen again, I think I would sign for that.
Well, and we said that before in the show, is that, you have no idea what, or people have no idea what kind of attacks we're preventing by educating the public and making them aware of this. And I do believe that the real perpetrators of this event did not account for the internet being used in the sense that it was, especially user-created content like YouTube, things like that. Where we're talking to each other. They expect us to talk to each other about a cute squirrel video or the talking orange or whatever, but people are a lot more deep and awake than they anticipate.
And the irony is that internet was invented by the military. I repeat this all the time. They invented their own demise, or demise, how do you say demise? Demise, yes, because this is the means that will act eventually end that kind of power, and they invented it. But of course, I mean, in 2005, I pieced together my first 2004 pieced together my first film, my first part of what would be my first film, which was on the Pentagon. I didn't know where to put it. I didn't know how to show it to people. I had to run around the internet, find one person who had a website, who had enough bandwidth to actually support the streaming of this piece of film, 20-minute film. I was crazy because I didn't know where to put it. I mean, 2 years later, you have the explosion of YouTube. Of course, they could have never imagined this back in 2000. Of course not. And they're always one step behind, I think. And because you can tell that you can sometimes you feel this desire of suppressing the internet somehow. They use different excuses, cyber terrorism, but really what bothers them is the velocity and the transparency with which information spreads. They can't stand that. I mean, you have more and more CNN pursuing what's happening on the web than vice versa now. The more and more the news refer to what has been already discussed on the internet. They become commentators now. The news shows are commentators to what happens in real time on the internet. They were not ready for this and are at least one step behind. On the other hand, you can never close the internet or hamper it, because it's also the means of economical support. This is why I say they built their own demise, because you cannot close it. You cannot take it away unless you destroy the entire economy in the country.
Now, you've managed to break through to a large extent in Italy, thanks, of course, to your efforts there. What is the difference in attitude about this topic there than in the rest of the Western world? Well,
Italy is a special country because we came out of 20 years of actual state terrorism in the 70s and 80s, which was conducted secretly by the CIA. Not so secretly. I mean, we know by now. We have all the confessions. But it was done because they wanted to avoid the alliance between the Democratic Party and the Communist Party, which were both very big then. They were like 40 and 40% each. They were just about to make an alliance. The U.S. did not want any communist in our government, so they started a long period of state terrorism. So by now, we have learned very well how to recognize it. We have this experience. It's unique, mostly. I think only Germany has had the same season of home terrorism in the 70s. It was called Rote Armee-Fraktion. It was very similar. So we are ahead of you guys in detecting the clues. At the same time, it's easier for us to judge America because from outside, it's easier to see America as the imperialist country which pretends to bring democracy everywhere, but when you spell democracy, you really spell just power and conquest. So it's easier. The problem is from within, and unless this changes within, it will not change anything. It has to be the American people who understand that. Unless they change, I say the same about the Jewish problem. I said that the only way to solve the Palestinian problem is by the own Jewish people solving the problem within themselves. They have two souls in there. They have to figure out which one stays and which one goes. And I think the same is here. There's a rotten, corrupted soul in America that is part of this empire, and there is a clean, beautiful, healthy, and young and very promising soul. And once that one takes over, I think America is going to be the greatest place in the world to be.
And for last question, your parting advice, what would it be to people, especially in America, who are awake to this, they're battling this gigantic wall here? What advice would you give them, the most important for helping to expose this lie?
Don't put people in a corner. Remember that there's a reason why they're refusing to look at the evidence. So don't push it down the throat. There's no use. You get the opposite reaction. They would say, "Oh, yeah, you're right," but then the next day the wound is closed already. It's sealed. Open up slowly by showing and explaining how the process of power is. It's a much more longer process. But by telling the history, for example, of what has happened before and how it really works, then you prepare the terrain for accepting the possibility of an inside job. You can just slam that down the throat of somebody. It's too large a fish for anybody to swallow unless you're already ready for it. So you need to prepare the terrain. You need to explain how the process of conquering countries and invading countries in order to support our own wealth and our own well-being has to be relying on lies and fake incidents simply because that's the way the Constitution is. There's no other way for us to go into war. So that could start you thinking. And by giving the examples of, as I said, Pearl Harbor mostly, but the Vietnam War as well, which is still very fresh for many people. And if you have that evidence, then you can find the New American Century online on YouTube or Google or any of those. They're pretty well presented, those examples, and those can certainly help to open up and prepare the terrain for a further step. But it needs to be done steps at a time, not all at once.
All right. This has been a great discussion. This hour has gone by very fast for me. I want to thank you for coming on 9/11 Freefall. Folks, we are out of time. Remember, you can listen to 9/11 Freefall every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. This is Andy Steele saying good luck. Have a great week.
Goodbye, everybody.